Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, December 1st, the first day of December, freezing outside. Maybe I'll put a video of I made this pond in like a little creek and a waterfall in our front yard that I've spent years working on, and it's all frozen up, kind of cool. I've got so many videos of it, I just never post anything about it. But anyways, so I just want to say this before we get going. I want to start with some Biden stuff and whatever, a bunch of like leftover things and stuff to get to. Rachel Maddow crying again. But first, I want to say this. This idea of communicating to people through some sense of telepathy or some other way, right? Where, you'll be thinking about somebody and all of a sudden they'll message you or you'll run into them or, something like this, right? Like you think about somebody and then like a day later they call you. You haven't talked to that person, relative or somebody, old friend. You haven't talked to that person in years, something like that, which happens, I think, quite frequently. They did these experiments where they killed baby rabbits miles away from the mother rabbit and she reacted. I don't know specifics behind that, but I believe things like that were done, right? And for practical use, I've had this happen a number of times where I have to come to a sudden stop, like, where I'm driving and there'll be a yellow light and really should go through it, but and I won't. Like sometimes I will, but sometimes I won't, where you're kind of in that position where you're a little bit late for the yellow light, but you're kind of going fast enough that really you don't really want to slam on your brakes. And where I live, people drive a little bit crazy, like a little bit like they run. They often would go, and I always have to look behind me, make sure the person stops, right? And I will look in the rearview mirror if there's a car coming behind me, and oftentimes I'll like mentally project the word "stop" at the driver of the car behind me. And I'm not sure what the effects of it are, but I think it's helped in a number of occasions. People are distracted now, people are on their phones, and, getting rear-ended, that's like I think the number one accident that happens. People run into other cars because they're distracted or whatever it might be. I've had it a few times where I've been, like, I didn't choose to look in the rearview mirror and I see a car coming really fast. Like the car maybe isn't aware that I'm stopped, and I've done it, and the car all of a sudden will slow down and stop. Maybe it has something to do with that or not. I'm saying this as a way that people could think about it, like just like you're with the idea that I'm communicating with that person, like I'm pulling them out of their stupor or whatever. Like it's not even that sophisticated a thought, just the idea is there. There's no way to validate the effects, even if I could talk to the driver, because they would they would hear stop or some way of, becoming alert. They would snap out of whatever they're doing, and they wouldn't attribute it to somebody else sending them a message mentally. Also using the transmission that's available in the Sajmark system, this energy that's transmitted in the sittings. I've been rereading the Preceptor book about the positive suggestions in terms of spiritual, subtle suggestions that are given, that reach people on a subliminal level. And so this kind of energetic communication, right, there's some sort of, thought to thought, mind to mind is available to people. We just have it. It's not sophisticated yet. It's not something we've learned how to use. But, sometimes, like, if you're leaving your kids at home and you have to, like, if you break mental contact with them, they will just, like, when they're, in their teenage years or whatever, they'll just, like, go wild or whatever. Just, not just, like, have parties, but they'll forget to do whatever you told them to do and, these things, right? And so you have to keep them in mental contact. Years and years ago when I worked as, when I got my first job as a counselor, I worked with this population that was called sexually reactive. These were boys between the age of 10 and 14 who, for the most part, had been sexually abused or exposed to sexual material when they were kids. And then they had engaged in sexual activity with like fellow classmates or siblings or something somewhere, foster care or something, and they had been, termed sexually reactive, but they were like little junior sex offenders. And each one of them had been a victim and an abuser, right? Like a little pedophile. And so it was our job as a staff to keep them in earshot and eyesight at all times. Like we couldn't be out of earshot and eyesight. It was a one staff to three kid ratio. So if they were outside playing, we had a playground and, there's sports fields. The kids just couldn't be by themselves talking in a way that you were, there was no staff there to listen. Because oftentimes they would engage in sexual behaviors. And, as a place, you were supposed to prevent it by not allowing them to have that kind of access to each other, right? They were never supposed to be behind like a closed door together in their rooms or whatever. And so, I had just started doing the meditation, and I realized I could project my consciousness, and be aware of things. I can't explain it any other way. But it's something that, can be done, that I read later on in the preceptor books of some of the things that the master would do. Like one of the masters, Babaji, he had somebody come visit him at his house. People used to come visit him in his house, and he would, they would sleep in one of his room. He had these rooms and things, not, wasn't like hotel level standards, wasn't, by Western standards, but he would feed people, and, he was a very poor guy, poor by American standards financially, but he would feed people, and they'd stay at his house. There's a guy there, and he'd stay at his house for like a couple of weeks. And the guy said, "Can I stay here longer?" And Babaji said, "No, you got to go back home. You didn't lock your door when you left, and I've been watching over your house, but I can't have, it's taken, energy away from me. I need to use for other things, right?" And the guy was like, "No, he locked his door." He was like, "You didn't know why Babaji said that, because he locked his door." But then in India, they have these locks that, it's like a deadbolt, but there's a metal frame that goes over the deadbolt, like to protect people from trying to jimmy the door. So the metal frame goes over the there's a metal frame, and the deadbolt locks the door, locks in the door frame, and the whole metal thing goes over so you can't see what's happened. And he got home, and he must have been in a rush. He realized he was in a rush, and he closed the door. He didn't close the door all the way. And so he locked the deadbolt, but it wasn't over the latch. And so it was locked. It was an even worse situation because it couldn't close all the way, even by like wind. And the thing was just banging in the thing. And somehow Babaji was able to perceive this and mentally guard his house, with an open door, which in India, like people crawl through your windows. They have bars on their windows and things because it's a very populated place. And so these cities, and so you see all the houses have bars, even like in nice neighborhoods, they have bars on their windows, especially maybe in nice neighborhoods, because people crawl through the windows and things. And, like it's just a place where you have to have, secure whatever it is. They often have like glass and like barbed wire stuff embedded in the tops of walls so people can't climb over the walls and whatever it might be. It's not like a violent crime, but sneaky kind of burglary kind of stuff. And there was another story where there's a woman who, she was one of the sort of saintly people famous in the system, older woman. And some guys broke into her house, and Babaji was aware of it, and he told them like mentally to get out, and they apologized to her and left. And so like he did some sort of work. So there's, these examples that I was aware of, right? And there's ways to be like just mentally aware and project your consciousness, like if you're driving and, these things to end up being safe and things and watch over stuff. And but there's a technique I wanted to give to people just because I thought, this not, again, I don't recommend things and whatever. You choose to believe this or do it for yourself. But, if you have like a loved one who is, like you have kids who are in trouble or something, they let you know that they're in crisis, or, people are in a storm or something, or just you wake up in the middle of the night and you're kind of aware of somebody, and all of a sudden they come to your mind and you feel fear or you feel some sort of upset. The technique is to, imagine the person and then feel the love that you have for the person, and then wrap them in like a bubble, like a golden bubble of love or some sort of, it doesn't have to have a color to it, but like this idea of some abstract bubble of love that's surrounding them, that God's watching over them, this idea that God's there with them. And the effects have been, I've used this myself a number of times and feel like there's been disasters have been averted because of that. You can do it for yourself. It's not as effective, but you can always pray and, have God be with you in a situation. There's that as well. But I'm talking about something that can be long distance. For example, my daughter's suicide. I don't think she would have committed suicide if she had lived with me. And she had said that to me once, that she wasn't going to commit suicide because she knew that I would, she said it's one thing keeping her from doing it, like that it would upset me or whatever it was. And she was manipulative, so I don't know, she's whatever. But like I kind of believe that was true because I would have mentally kept her in my, sphere of mental activity. In fact, I did that all the time. There was some energy that I put into just sort of watching over her. And like you can do this as you develop these meditative skills, projecting your consciousness and just being aware of people. And again, people are going to die, but things are going to, they can't prevent death or something. It's not like necessarily something like miracles, but at least people can feel, you're bringing God to them in a sense, right? This is what's happening. You're facilitating a connection between people and God when you pray for them. These things. My grandmother, my mother used to do rosary prayers, and it's not the most effective prayer. It's a Catholic prayer. You have these rosary beads, and you say 5 Hail Marys and 1 Our Father. I used to do it. It's a way of praying, but any way of praying works to whatever extent. Some are more effective than others. Praying directly to God, not saying a prayer like a set prayer like you do in Christianity. Like that's a way to do things, but not the most effective way. People say mantras also. Again, it's a way of doing things, but just connecting to God and communicating to God and having thoughts to God, you get into a meditative state, to a deeper state, and where you're like more reserved and you're internalized to whatever extent, feeling the presence of God, and then there's a communication there, and oftentimes it doesn't have to be a specific sentence or words, just a feeling, almost like a feeling that you're praying for somebody or something. Again, not saying God, telling God what to do, but just having God be there with the person, right? That there's, divinity with the person that's going through something, right? There are etheric beings around us all the time. If there's souls, then there are sometimes souls who are disembodied, and your soul, and when you sleep, or you could be in a meditative state, and your soul can, go to other places. I mean, your soul can be in you in other places at the same time. Your soul is not bound by the laws of physics and time and space and things like this. And your soul can be with somebody. Like if they're going through something, somebody's suffering something in a long distance situation, there's a way for people to, communicate and intercommune in a sense with other people. These long distance sittings, some of the people who listen to my videos do the Gratefullness meditation, which is just Saj Marg done, in a post, the corruption of it is Dodgy, the current president of the system, that has gone south, that he's fallen spiritually and turned into a real piece of shit. But he, the people who have done Gratefulness, I've kept that alive, and I started doing like preceptor work again. And people are experiencing the sittings. People even experience energy in the videos, it's coming through my voice or whatever it is. Whatever, energetic stuff that's comes in, this transmission of Pranhuiti that's available in the Saj Marg system. And, when people talk about, like, that's not possible. Well, right now you're listening to something that I am saying into a microphone. And the microphone is a Bluetooth microphone. And the microphone is converting whatever I'm saying into something, digital format. And it is transmitting it from my microphone to my computer, which is about 4 feet or 3 feet away, 2.5, 3 feet away from my microphone. And it's going into my computer and into a, Adobe Audition app. And I can watch it. I'm looking at the app right now. And it's all these various bars and things. Like I'll take a screenshot of it. And as well, you know what I can do? I can actually tape this right now. Actually, I can't tape it because the microphone will be used in the other app. So I can't do that while I'm doing this, but I'll just take a screenshot of this thing here, and that'll be the opening image. And so, it's recording as I speak, and I guess I could play it and I could show you the thing, whatever, that's possible. But then, it goes into digital format. And so I will then put images to this in another Adobe app, Premiere Pro, which does my video rendering. And I'll, look through it and replay it myself. Some of it, whatever it is. This I wouldn't. I just put a picture to this. And, I don't listen to it anymore. Like, I just assume it's good. I mean, whatever. Like, it's just done and it doesn't need to be edited to save time, but I used to listen to them. And then I'll put the whole video together and I'll render it. It turns it into another type of file. It's a video file. The audio files and the other clips that I take from ScreenFlow and all these things are different, files. They have different, they're different types of files. And they, like you can't download some of these things directly. I guess you can now because, YouTube allows those. But YouTube used to be very exclusive in the kind of file it had to be. And then I render it. It puts into a file that's a video file that's best for YouTube that translates to that app. Like there's specific settings in Premiere Pro, and they have one that's great for YouTube. Like it's made for YouTube videos. They have ones that are specific to TikTok videos, right? The type of file, the way it is, it'll play better on their app. And then I upload the file using internet in my house, and it goes from my house to whatever servers or whatever it is, right? And then ends up going to the YouTube platform. And so you can understand that this is all happening. I mean, we now have the ability for long-distance phone calls, and now phone calls from, wireless phone calls for at first, and then phone calls that could be done with a cell phone, things bouncing off of satellites and all these other things, right? Whatever the pathway. People are using satellite internet from, Elon Musk and whoever it is, right? These types of satellite internet. And we have these energetic signals that are bouncing around our house. And information is being, going to these computers and these other things, right? But we don't have that capability inside us, right? Our ability to communicate and these things. People can believe in the technology, but human beings have these same types of apparatuses. We can receive things and we can transmit them. And we do that all the time, right? We are putting information out to the world. We come up with plans, and then we manifest those plans. And part of that is, verbal communication, where we have learned to make sounds that people interpret as words that have meaning. We have these different languages, right? So it's only, you know how it works. Like you've been trained to understand English. You are able to receive English through your ears, and to somebody else it sounds like gibberish, somebody in some other country. But we can make these sounds, right? And animals make sounds and they communicate things. Chickens have about 20 to 30 different sounds that mean different things. Like they have a sound they make for an aerial predator, like a hawk or something. If they see a hawk, they make that sound, and it makes all the other chickens look up and be aware that there's a danger in the sky, right? Like you have this, animals have ways of making noises. Of course, dolphins have this, ability to project, sonar. Like they have sonar in their system. Things that are, I had a book when I was a kid, and it said nature thought of it first. And it has all these inventions that nature thought of first, right? Like it's an amazing book I read when I was a kid, that all these things that are human inventions were things that are actually something that nature had already created. And so if you have all these capabilities inside your system, and we're only using a fraction of our mental capacity and almost none of our spiritual capacity, You imagine what kind of abilities that we have that are being suppressed in one way or another. A lack of awareness, a lack of evolution, a lack things that are there for us to evolve into. We haven't done it, but there's people who have, and there's levels to this thing, and so these things can be done. The Sajmark meditation is something that helps to create some of these things, right? They're not, they can become distractions. So, the system is about spiritual evolution. But some of these abilities and some of these things that are hidden in people, become active in some way or another, at least at some fundamental level. And so being able to connect with people and look after them. There was a preceptor that I went to. These were two American guys. This guy was now living in North Carolina, and he's married and he had kids, but he used to be like a single guy when he started doing the meditation. And the meditation, you become more subtle, and you have to give up things that are like it's hard to watch graphic things. It's hard to watch gross things, and it happens quite naturally, not like some things are forbidden. But your heart starts looking at things like graphic violence and pornography and different things, and you feel it. Or you just feel things that are icky when people are yelling at each other on some show or something. You can affect you in a way that it wouldn't have before. You become more sensitive to things, right? And he had just started doing the meditation, and he had a preceptor, American guy. A guy used to watch my videos, and we had sort of a falling out, but he was a good preceptor or whatever. And he was playing video games. And the guy who was doing the meditation was playing video games. He was telling me this story. And he was playing Grand Theft Auto. And he started to feel not right about it. He had just started the meditation, and he had been he was some young guy from California who was just, engaging in behaviors that he would engage in, that his peers and him would engage in, right? Just kids that age would play Grand Theft Auto, it's just what they did. But now he was doing the meditation, he didn't feel good about it. And so he stopped playing, but then he got bored and came back and played it again. And it was late at night, in the middle of the night. And his preceptor called him the next day and said, "What were you doing last night?" And the guy said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, I woke up in the middle of the night." This guy's an older guy, married, whatever. So his wife's sleeping next to him. He said, "I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought about you, you were present in my mind. And I got up and I went to the bathroom, I threw up." And because the guy was himself feeling nauseous when he was playing the video game. It was like saying, "Don't do this, you're so gross and you're creating these impressions." And his heart was now sensitive to the graphic nature of this violent video game that he was, was pretending to engage in criminal behavior. Grand Theft Auto, you become a thug. I'm not all that familiar with the game, but I know it's pretty gross and brutal. And you are a thug out there stealing cars and slapping hoes and shit like that, right? And so his inner world was not something that he was allowed to do, right? So I guess I'll put this also in my journey series. But this is kind of it ties into that. But as a preceptor, this guy was aware, as a preceptor, you're supposed to look after the people who do the meditation in some way, and there's a connection there. And this guy was connected in such a way that he woke up in the middle of the night and was aware that this guy was doing something he shouldn't do. And the guy needed some confirmation because he knew the games were wrong, but it was something that he did habitually, and it was having a negative effect on him. And so he said, he realized that he had to stop doing that, right? Because this was probably 10, 15 years after that. He had 4 little kids, and was married, and he was is a preceptor himself, this kind of thing. And so there's lots of documentation of this sort of thing. In and out of the Sajmark system, people have these interactions with people. All of a sudden, people wake up or they're aware that my dad just died. They just know it. You just know things, right? Or something like that. The person's thousands of miles away. And so there's, something that can be utilized as a way to sort of look after people and Certainly prayer and things like this is a part of that. And so again, like I don't recommend anything, but this is something for people to look into themselves. And I mean, it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt to project good intentions to people. I have so many people that, like I'm saying, I've said this before. I ban people because there's hateful energy in comments. People are butthurt and they're miserable and they're projecting, hateful energy. Of course, they have this idea of curses. If you read the Mahabharata, the whole thing wouldn't have happened if people didn't have the ability to curse other people. Like there's major curses that have been done against people. There's a character that I believe I was that suffered a couple of curses, and I believe I might have been in a past life. That's a Mahabharata figure, right? And like there's just all these curses that happen. These saints go around getting pissed off at people and cursing them. And without those curses, like the whole thing would have fell apart. There's the curses, like sometimes a saint gives somebody a curse because they have to prevent something from happening, right? Or make something happen. And so, but it's a whole thing, right? Like people have these bad intentions and project a negative energy, or create something, and that someone else has, or pull something out of somebody. I guess in the Sizemore system, the first master of the system said, curses work only if a person has that, samskara has that, that future thing that's going to happen in their future at some point. And so, but it can be pulled forward through a curse. And so, there's all these bad things that people do, bad energy, leaving comments. And think about how you're arguing with somebody on the internet and you feel rage, or you feel hurt, or you feel something in your belly, and you get a mean, email from somebody, or you get some bullshit from somebody, whatever it is. And it really, like, it zaps you. You get, like, whatever. And, like, that's energetic stuff that's affecting you at an emotional level. Or another example, if someone leaves you a nice note, a loving note, right, just for saying how much they, care about you or whatever, and you feel it in your heart, you feel some love energy in your heart from somebody's communication. People used to get these letters, and they'd read the letters, and people used to write, and the handwriting, and there was like energy in it, and they would wait for a letter from people, and I mean, love letters in some cases, but letters of affection from other people, and it would make somebody light your heart up and things. You would feel emotion from it. And so these kind of things exist. How is that? Like, people are in a distance, but you can feel their feeling. You can feel love for them. You can feel, you can think about somebody who has died, and the love that you had for them when they were alive, and it still exists on a soul level. People feel the presence of the soul of a person. The soul hangs around for a little bit, and you can still feel that presence in the, they've left their bodies, but their soul is still available. And, baby spirits, I experienced this with my daughter Anna specifically, but there was all of the kids, that there was a baby spirit there before the pregnancy happened, that these baby spirits are hanging around the mother, their eventual mother, and waiting for the right opportunity for the mom to get pregnant, right? So when that's the case, it's hard to, you find that women get pregnant even when birth control is used, because there's a baby spirit ready to be born, right? Without a baby spirit, the physical birth can't happen. The physical pregnancy, there has to be a third soul involved, right? This also speaks to abortion, because there's a third soul choosing to create a body in the mother with the sperm of the man and the egg of the woman, and coming together on a physical level. But there has to be some spiritual entity behind everything in the world. There's some kind of spiritual, just like on a computer, there's computer language, right, that manifests what you're seeing in front of you, or what you're hearing right now. Like, if you looked at the code behind this voiceover that I'm doing, that's being created in a digital format, but it also exists, in terms of, like, you can hear it, like you can hear it creates an illusionary, a copy of what I'm saying right now. The original here is with my dogs in my room, that I'm, laying here saying these things, saying these words, and then it goes out to you in some kind of other format, right? that everything on the internet has some kind of digital code behind it, some computer language behind it. And you can see it, like you can see what it looks like on that level, like they used to watch in the Matrix movies. Where they watch the code that becomes whatever manifests in the Matrix itself, right? The Matrix where you perceive yourself as a body, but then there's a code, and that code in the real world, in the physical world, is a soul and it's spiritual energy. There's spiritual energy behind the rocks and the plants and the books and the houses and the trees and everything that's there, right? And so, when you penetrate to something on a spiritual level, on a soul level, and it can bypass these other material manifestations and limitations, and there can be direct soul-to-soul contact. And that's the Sajmark system of transmission and these other things. So anyways, I just thought I would say these things. It's a way to, maybe they'll be helpful to people. I don't know. Let's get into the more mundane stuff here. Okay, so I just finished my voiceover. This more spiritually oriented, talking about intercommuning and all these things, higher level consciousness. And so I walk into the kitchen. I'm about to have breakfast. My wife was listening to this video here for Black Friday extravaganza. Drunk Kamala reemerges. Trump shows true colors. And I was talking about the James Brolin saying on Joe Rogan that Disney had the biggest porn collection of anybody, right? And so I get into some of my Disney stuff because I made lots of videos about Disney. And this happens here, there. And, these people are involved in this stuff. But anyways, let's go. There's some, a breaking news about Kamala Harris, at least as of Tuesday. It's breaking news. Okay, so I was doing editing on this one. Today's Wednesday, November 27th. I did the voiceover yesterday. And I was looking through my Disney images, remembering things that I covered. Back when I used to make image videos, I have all these folders of things. And, some of the things that I neglected to say is they have a thing about orphans. Like there's all these orphans. Peter Pan, of course, is an orphan. Luke Skywalker is an orphan. But if you look at most of these movies and like Harry Potter, he's an orphan. I mean, that's not Disney, but it's a theme where somebody who doesn't have parents becomes a hero. And, not that I want to shit on orphans, because I don't, obviously, but it's... so my wife is cracking up because I just walk into the kitchen and I said the lines that, not like it's not like I want to shit on orphans. Let me say it again. So, because I don't. It's a theme where somebody who doesn't have parents becomes a hero. And, not that I want to shit on orphans, because I don't. We were joking around about this for about 10 minutes, cracking up. I have my standards. And in pockets of the future, we don't shit on orphans, right? It's a guarantee. There's no or shitting on orphans. Well, I'll shit on, the president and the political system and celebrities and pretty much everyone else, but orphans are off the table. And what I was trying to say there is that when you're in a situation where you're orphaned, you're not going to have the best chance of success in life in terms of being a fully functioning person. You might become rich, you might be successful in some capacity, but you're going to be damaged goods. Not in fact, we had watched this Impractical Jokers bit where they were designing perfume lines for they make these ridiculous things for their, it's like they're competing, right? And so the two of the guys will design perfume labels for each other. One person designed crop dust. It smells like you've been crop dusted. Those chemicals they spray on plants. And the other guy designed, whose idea was orphan. It smells like the perfume smelled like an orphan. And then said every package is damaged in some way, right? So, this idea that orphans have been, it's when you don't have a loving family and parents, there's, it's not it's not something to Like I said, I'm not shitting on them. It's something where it's, that's there, right? But in these Disney movies, they, or just not Disney, but all these different, big blockbuster movies where there's a hero, oftentimes they don't have a parent, and that's, or both parents or one parent. One of the parents has died is a big theme. Dead parents, right? Dead parents is a part of their process of becoming heroes. And this ties to the MK Ultra and whatever. But the fact that I said this line, that not that I want to shit on orphans. And I walked in the kitchen. My wife was listening because I had no idea. I had no idea the context until I thought about it, and then I had her send me a screenshot so I could find the clip here. But I want to confirm to you at Pockets of the Future, we do not shit on orphans here. Like whatever else might happen, we have there's lines that we won't cross. There's lines I won't cross. And I thought that was funny given the context that I just had this very sort of spiritual introduction to the video. But let's move on to something else here. So whenever I wake up in the morning, Twitter is sending me notifications, and I would turn them off, but I've used a number of them in videos. And Greta Van Strusten, who I didn't even know she used to be on Fox News. I don't know what she does now. And I don't follow her, like I don't have, I didn't even know she existed. But anyways, Twitter sent me a tweet or a notification of a tweet she put out. And then I found the article and the cover. This was the cover of the New York Post. And so New York Post is very pro-Israel and is Republican-oriented, as is Greta Van Strusten. The final insult. After a month of undermining Israel, Biden shows off book claiming a Jewish state shouldn't exist. And so this is the video, The 100 Years War on Palestine. This is written by obviously a Muslim name here. And so President Biden sent an incendiary message to Israel and Jewish Americans yesterday, walking out of a Nantucket bookstore holding The 100-Year Wars on Palestine, a book by a radical Columbia University professor that argues that Israel shouldn't exist and is a product of a colonial war against the Palestinians. And is the product of a colonial war against the Palestinians. And so, it's so fucked. The Republicans and everybody who denies that there's a genocide going on, when, the numbers don't lie. Like, whatever they say happened on October 6th, which I doubt the legitimacy of any of that. Like, I doubt that, I believe that Hamas is very likely an asset of the Israeli government, right? Let me go to the article here itself. So anybody who knows about any of this has been willing to be honest about it and knows how this works, not just for Israel, but any colonizing presence, any country that has a dominant military force and wants to go and beat the shit out of another country and steal their stuff, occupy another country, dominate them, colonize them, right? They will say that they were provoked, because no country wants to look like an asshole. No country wants to look like an evil empire, right? No country wants to look like the Darth Vader, the whatever it is, the Empire, right? In Star Wars, no country wants to look like some evil military bully that just goes in and beats the shit out of people and takes their stuff and colonizes them and the rest of it. So they have to have excuses. They have to be provoked. They have to be defending themselves or defending people in the country. That's another thing. Oh, we're just trying to defend the other people in the country. They're being, some sort of a genocide. Like they might use what's happened in Palestine to invade Israel, but they don't care about the Palestinian people. Like, that's not going to happen. But that would be an example of that type of scenario or bullshit, political talking points. Oh, we're just trying to save the Palestinians and then go over and occupy Israel and take their stuff, right? Like, that would be the excuse to do that. Because no little country, just like, would you walk up to a lion and punch it in the face, like jump over the, even in a zooed lion or something, like a bear or frickin', anything, something that can, like, hippopotamus or a rhinoceros or an elephant and go over and start smacking it, right? The thing would crush you because it's physically superior. Or just some really big guy or somebody, right? Some mean looking, with like a bunch of gang kids hanging out, and you go and start insulting them, right? There was one of the Die Hard movies with Bruce Willis. He was in an African American neighborhood in an inner city neighborhood, and he had a sign that was, he was forced to do this by some criminal mastermind, and he had just stripped down to his underwear and wear a sign that he hated the N-word, right? N-word people. And so, like, he's there, in this neighborhood, and Samuel L. Jackson comes up to save him, and he's like, I'm a cop, and I'm being forced to do this or whatever it is, right? But, people don't do things where they're in physical jeopardy. Like, you have a sense of safety. And every once in a while, someone's suicidal and has a death wish. And so they, do something like that. They provoke a fight with somebody that they want to get their ass kicked, right? Sometimes people just feel bad about themselves and they want to, they want to get beaten up, or they've grown up in abuse and they're used to it. Like they've been beat up their whole life and it makes them feel comfortable or whatever. But in terms of a country, they don't do that, right? Like countries don't, when they know another country wants to come in and steal their stuff and wants to beat them up, right? Wants to destroy them, wants to go to war with them, they don't give them an excuse to go to war. They do everything they can to avoid war because they know they're going to be out of power when that happens, and they might even be killed. So an invading force is always an invading force. And they make excuses like the big event in 2001. That was an excuse to go and do those wars over in whatever it is. And whether you believe the official story of what happened or not, it wasn't these countries that were looking to be invaded. These countries had nothing to do with it, right? The governments themselves, because they don't do things that are going to mean they're going to get their ass kicked, right? It's much worse because it's a war. Wars are horrible. You don't want another country invading your country, and will do anything to avoid it. And so the Palestinian people have been getting their ass kicked by Israel for 40 years, or, whatever the time period that they've existed or coexisted together. And Israel's stated goal has always been this. Okay, so let me show you this first.
You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, and I'm a Zionist. I got in trouble, got criticized very badly by the southern part of my state and some of the southern parts of the country when 35 years ago I said, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, and I'm a Zionist. Woo! You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Folks, were there no Israel, there wouldn't be a Jew in the world that was safe. Were there no Israel.
Woo!
I make no bones about it. I've had my differences with some Israeli leadership. I've known Bibi for now 51 years. He has a picture on his desk of he and I when he was a young member of the Israeli service here, foreign service. And I was a 32-year-old senator. And I wrote on the top of it, Bibi, I love you, but I don't agree with the damn thing you had to say.
Okay, so, he's a Zionist, right? And he has been supporting Israel for a number of years, and he signed the pledge to Israel that all these politicians sign. And Joe Biden has been one of the biggest supporters of Israel. And he was in charge of all kinds of, as a senior senator, he had positions in the, in terms of the Defense Department and foreign relations and other things. And so he's a Zionist. Like they're saying that this guy, from the New York Post, that this guy's shitting on Israel, and he's done anything but that, right? He's offered the least amount of criticism that you could offer, and it's just words. All his support is behind Israel, and there's no Palestinian lobby. There's no, there's a big Israeli lobby that makes every one of these politicians sign a pledge to defend Israel. Like they have to sign this pledge. I showed you this before, that politician, that female politician from Georgia, Cynthia McKinney. I showed you the video where she talked about she didn't sign the pledge, and they dumped $1 million in the in a race for House of Representatives that doesn't have that kind of money, right? And she was in Georgia, and they dumped $1 million in her opponent's campaign, and she lost the seat because she didn't sign the pledge, right? So this is the kind of power the Israeli lobby has. There's no Palestinian lobby. Palestine is barely a country. They don't have an army. They don't have a government. They don't have money. They don't have resources. There's some Palestinian people here that maybe have a little bit of money, maybe a little bit of influence, like a couple, millionaires or whatever it is. But as far as, a lobbying group, no. And the other Arabs haven't lobbied on their behalf, like OPEC and Saudi Arabia has a better relationship with Israel than they do with Palestine. And so these countries haven't come to the Palestinian aid in terms of the UN and these other places, right? It's countries like in Europe they're speaking out for the Palestinian people at the UN because there's a fucking genocide and it's an occupation. And if you're a Zionist, this is what Zionists believe. So he's claiming to be a Zionist, and this is what Zionists believe. The Promised Land is central concept in Zionism. The Jewish national movement that established Israel as a key part of the Jewish national identity. The idea that the Promised Land comes from the Bible, where God promised Abraham and his descendants a land to their own, a land to call their own. Many Jews believe that land known now as Israel is the Promised Land. And so this is what Christians, so these right-wing Christians that made up the neocons, right? These, they weren't really Christians, but some of these evangelical Christians, because they say it's in the Bible, and the Bible's their word of God, right? It's not. The Old Testament's full of shit, right? The Old Testament's blasphemous towards God, and I've explained that before. Regardless of your indoctrination, truth is truth, right? It's not my truth. It's not my opinion, right? Like when somebody talks about how God is a narcissist who demands one of his followers, like Abraham, he said he promised Abraham this land, but he also told Abraham to kill his only son, right, his miracle baby, after Abraham had banished his other, his maid who he impregnated, and her son, right, Ishmael, I believe his name was, and God commanded Abraham to kill Isaac, to sacrifice Isaac. And they said, no, don't kill Isaac. I was just fucking with you. Here, kill this sheep instead. God doesn't do shit like that. God wouldn't have you sacrifice anything. There's animal sacrifice and human sacrifice in the Bible. And God never would do that. That's not what God would do. God is in the sheep. God is in your son. God wouldn't kill himself, right? Like there's no, the God that's in the Old Testament is a demon. The one that they're referring to as God is a demon. And it's not, or a series of demons, but it isn't God, right? It's a narcissistic demon, right? If there's an entity, it would be a demon, a demonic entity. It's a really bad person, a bad leader. He's punishing people left and right. He says, destroy this group, destroy that group, right? And just, it's not the way God would be. The way God's presented in every aspect of their description of God in the Old Testament, it's not God. Like it's the opposite of God. It would be describing the devil or demon or something, right? And so they believe in this promised land. And I show you guys this all the time. This is the promised land. It's 2/3 of Syria. It's half of Iraq. It's the top portion of Saudi Arabia, all rich, oil-rich land here. It's Lebanon, and this is Israel here, Lebanon up here. And it's part of Egypt. This is what was called Israel in the Bible. So if this is the land that God promised, God doesn't do that, that's bullshit. But all the people who are Zionists believe this. And the people that are in charge of this war in Israel believe this. There's lots of Jews that don't believe this. There's lots of people in Israel that are upset by the way the Palestinian people are treated. And they post videos. And they support the Palestinian people. So it isn't like all Jews believe this. But the ones that call themselves Zionists do. Right? And this is their push towards getting this. So they don't want just Israel, which is a small sliver of land right here. Right? The thing that's called Israel is just a small sliver of land. They want all of this other shit, which is occupied by these other countries. And the neocons that run Joe Biden's defense program, the Secretary of Defense and all the rest of it, he's hired neocons. They've pushed for this for years. They believe this, the Dick Cheneys and the people like that. And there's a little land here in Turkey as well here. So they're going to take land from 5 different countries to fulfill God's word. Like if they believe God promised this, then they believe that they have everything, they have to support God's promise. And that's what these Zionist motherfuckers believe, right? And Joe Biden has said he's a Zionist, and he's hired Zionists to run his, this whole thing that's happening with the Ukraine and Russia is a Zionist neocon war that they're pushing out there, right? And so Joe Biden is totally supporting Israel in every possible way. He said a few words that either was to pacify the liberal kids protesting and things like that about the genocide. He and Kamala Harris, a little bit of things that they said. But even that wasn't fucking tolerated. They were slammed for just saying a few words of like not even outrage about the fact that Israel was killing kids. They've killed 20,000 kids, right? They're murderers of children. And they don't look at these people as people, right? It says it in the Bible, they're goyim, right? Or whatever it is, goyim. And that they're like less than cattle. They're to be subjugated by the Jewish people. All these other people that are in the area. The Canaanites, God, what they call God in the Old Testament says, go kill the Canaanites and these people, right? That group and whatever group. Some king, David from the Bible, wanted to marry the king's daughter, and the king said, go get me 100 Philistine foreskins. So kill 100 Philistine people or soldiers or whatever it was, and then cut off their foreskins and bring them back to me, and you can have my daughter. And David was so ambitious, he killed 200 Palestinian or Philistines or whatever it is, right? And then cut off their foreskins because he's like into that, right? He's a hero in the Bible, but he likes to cut off the tips of other men's dicks, right? And then put them on a string and bring them to his father-in-law because that's how David rolls. Like this is some of the bullshit that's in the Bible, right? The Old Testament. And so it's like all this stuff, these two religions and all the rest of the stuff, they're fucked religions because they don't have an accurate description of God. Judaism, Islam, and because these all come from the same people, same group of people, they have some of these core beliefs, with Judaism being the initial religion, and the two spin-off religions that make up over half the people, 44 billion people, right? Over half the population is Christian or Muslim. And so these religions are fucked because the way that they think about God as being some, mean motherfucker sitting on a throne who's wrathful and petty and butthurt and jealous and all these things. And gets pissed off all the time and orders people destruction because he's a sociopathic demon or devil or whatever. And so let's go back to the article here. Okay, so here it is. Biden picks up anti-Israeli book during Black Friday shopping. 4 years too late, says author. Now, this motherfucker isn't going to read a book, right? Like, he's just not. There's Hunter there and their kid. And this isn't the stripper baby. There's Jill. And so this guy can barely walk into the bookstore. He's like his cognitive ability. I doubt his eyes work well enough for him to even read. And, this is complex matter. And they have him, like, why isn't it in a bag? Why is he carrying his own book? Like, this is sending a message. Right? This is sending a message to, everybody about like this, whatever it is. The author of the book says it's 4 years too late. He should have read it before he allowed Israel to go in and do what they are doing to the Palestinian people. And Joe Biden's resistance is probably a way for Trump to come in and give Israel a blank check. Retiring President Biden hit the shops on Black Friday and surprised onlookers by picking up a copy of a book describing the establishment of Israel as colonialism, which it is. That's been met with Palestinian resistance and acquisition. Its author bemoaned it's 4 years too late. And they got his name here, 100 Years War, this thing, by this Columbia University professor. The book argues that the modern history of Palestine can best be understood in terms of as a colonial war waged against the indigenous population by a variety of parties to force them to relinquish their homeland to another people against their will. That's exactly what it fucking is. What are you talking about? Like, the Palestinian people, there was a comedian that joked that, because the Palestinians don't have a military. They don't have an air force. I showed you this at the beginning of this thing. Like in one of my early videos, I documented all this stuff. what Israel has in terms of an air force, in terms of a navy, in terms of ground forces, in terms of an army. Palestine doesn't even have a government. Like they're not even. It's too divided. There's the West Bank, and there's the Gaza Strip, and there's a big chunk of Israel in between them. Israel has all the prime land, and there's many more Palestinians living there than Jews when the UN divided this into a country. And they gave Israel all the good parts, and then Israel started to grab onto more land. They've been taking Palestinian land, building settlements in Palestine, and they want to push the Palestinian people out, and they're using this excuse of these so-called terrorist groups, which is a thing that they fucking do, and, America does. We all, see this stuff playing out. The evil empires do, right? But they're trying to take that land, right? They want to get rid of Palestine and have it all be called Israel. And Trump is going to let them do it, and I don't know if anybody's going to stand up for the Palestinian people. But, the Palestinian people throw rocks. And somebody sent me a video a long time ago of a kid that the Israeli military takes and starts bullying. They grab the kid, they're manhandling him, and they want him to rat out the people who are throwing rocks. And they have machine guns and tanks and fucking airplanes that have, missiles on them and helicopters and bullshit like that the American government's given them. And the Palestinian people are throwing rocks. So much so there's a comedian that said, why aren't there more Palestinian Major League Baseball pitchers? Which is a funny joke because they're throwing rocks. They're throwing rocks against fucking tanks and shit, right? And there's all these videos of people who are there that are documenting the abuse of the Palestinian people. It's an open air prison. It's apartheid. It's a Holocaust. It's like these concentration camps. It's all the things. It's the reservations for the Indians. It's ethnic cleansing. It's genocide. And they're beating the shit out of these people and stealing their homes. There's a video out there where a Jewish guy just moves into a Palestinian people's homes, and they're videoing him and say, you just can't take our home. He said, yeah, I can. If it isn't going to be me, it's going to be another Jew. So just, we could just do that. They can just go in and take some Palestinians home and live there. And so this is what it's going on there, right? And, that's just truth. It's not like I hate Jews or, this is, in terms of this story, that's what's happening. It's an age-old story, right? And so these Zionists believe that God promised them the land so they can justify these actions because they say it's God's will. And when any motherfucker tells you that they're doing abusive things because God wills it, that's a fucking piece of shit, blasphemous, devil-worshipping liar and not somebody that's telling you the truth. Because God doesn't tell you to do bad shit, right? Like sometimes wars and things are necessary, but there's no, God doesn't pick sides. Sometimes, population has to be reduced, and the evil and the hatred and the bad behaviors of people and their bad thoughts and their bad attitudes manifest into self-destructive wars. And that's people's doing. It isn't God's doing. Wars are a result of whatever, God has created, and the occupation of people and all the things, the colonization of people. It's not God's picking your side because you're the winner. Oh, it must be God's will because we were able to beat the shit out of the other side. There's none of that, right? You just happen to be better prepared and better armed, and you have a superior military. But you're going to suffer just as like everybody else does. You'll suffer your actions and your maltreatment of your fellow human beings. Khalib, who is of Palestinian Lebanese descent, refers to President-elect Donald Trump's first administration as a mouthpiece for Israel and accuses Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of the most extreme government in his country's history. It goes on from here. We all know it, right? But for them to categorize this as Biden supporting or undermining Israel, my God, right? Like he said a few words about a genocide, and he didn't call it a genocide, and he's a piece of shit, and this is a photo op, and he's doing this purposefully, not him, his handlers, because he's just looking at him. He's clueless. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. They stuck a book in his hand. They told him to waddle to his car before he shits his depends diaper, and then this story comes out, right? It's completely being handled, and Israel's a part of this imagery because they want to squash. I just covered this in Trump's new attorney general thinks that all these protesters should be thrown out of the country because Israel's more important than America herself. So fuck all these motherfuckers, right?
I may not have brought you into this world, but I brought you into this house. And you are going to let me love you.
What the fuck? Right? You're gonna let me love you, right? I'm gonna love you. You're gonna let me love you. That's R, and that's just a form of R, right? Where you're forcing your love. You're going to let me love you, right? What if somebody came up to you and said, "You're going to let me love you," right? The turtle either digs it or it's not. Now it says Turtle Spa Day. Now sometimes you have to treat animals and they don't dig it, right? Like my dogs get ticks on them and they don't like it when you take them off, or spurs, or whatever it is, a thistle, these kind of things. My dog Buddy, like if he gets one of those little, sometimes they get those little grasses that have the little barbs on it. He'll walk up if he gets one on his foot, and he'll put his foot out to get it taken out. Like he's at least conscious of it, and he knows that we can take care of it, right? But in terms of forcing your love on an animal, if the animal's not digging it, right, then you should stop doing it unless you're doing something for their benefit that they don't understand. Like I said, it's just weird. People are just fucking weird. It's just so fucking weird. Okay, so once in a while, this dude, Rachel Maddow, cries. And it's always about Trump, at least the ones I've seen. Maybe there's other times that aren't as popular because it's not about Trump. But let's see what this one's about.
The AP has just broken some new news. This has just come out from the Associated Press. This is incredible. Trump administration officials have been sending babies and other young children. Oh, hold on. To at least 3.
She just can't do it. You know what she wasn't crying, though, was when Joe Biden droned 7 kids in Afghanistan. Because those kids, they're not worth any tears. They're not, when he just out and out killed 7 kids, as opposed from separating kids from their parents because of, some kind of law violation in terms of their coming into the country illegally. She cries for these kids who are separated from their parents, but dead kids, they're dead and they're in Afghanistan, so really they're not worth any tears. She didn't shed tears for them.
Can we put up the graphic of this? Thank you. Do we have it? No. 3 tender age shelters in South Texas. Lawyers and medical providers just...
Can't do it. You can't do it. Just can't do it.
I think I'm going to have to hand this off. Yeah.
I can't do it. Joe Biden just droned 7 kids. Oh, yeah, okay, that's okay. Israel has just killed 20,000 kids in Palestine. No, that's okay. But Trump separated kids. It's just too much for me to bear. Okay, that was from 6 years ago, and Rachel Maddow didn't cry this time when Trump was elected, knowing that he's going to, at least he promised to do mass deportation, which would involve kids. But anyways, Gwen Walz, I want to have one last Gwen Walz moment here. I didn't cover this before. It's a 49-minute podcast interview, something with Katie Couric. There's Katie Couric there. She used to have, something else going on. Now she's got a podcast. And you got a big-ass Gwen Walz, crazy-ass close-up of her face. This should be excellent.
All right. I guess we're ready to go, yeah?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, look at that.
First of all, it is so nice
He just does crazy. No one does crazy like Gwen.
to meet you. I'm assuming it's okay if I call you Gwen.
Please call me Gwen. Yes.
Please do. The crazy bitch, crazy motherfucker, I don't know, anything.
Please.
Well, thank you for talking to us on this Saturday morning.
Absolutely.
And I imagine the last few months for you, Gwen, have brought new meaning to the word whirlwind. How would you describe
It's exactly this. Why are you not on some other, doing something that's not a podcast? I mean, the podcast's actually better, but why are you not part of the mainstream media with that kind of it brings new meaning to the word whirlwind.
you've been going through?
Well, let me say again, thank you for having me. And maybe the last few months can be kind of crystallized in this moment because I never imagined I would be on a podcast or an interview or any sort of thing with Katie Couric.
I mean, it's a dream come true.
So that's kind of what it's like.
That's what it's like. Like one day, I'm baking cookies and like I'm pulling the legs off of insects and I'm beheading mice and things like that, and then they put them in pies, and then next thing I know, I'm talking to Katie Couric on a podcast.
It was a fast process, and we were busy with our lives, being governor and first lady in Minnesota, and our kids, and I have been door knocking, and
I'm a big door knocker. Everyone says that Gwen Walz. I'm Gwen door knocker Walz. I mean, look at that. Look at that crazy. She just brings the crazy. Like this.
calling and working on elections in Minnesota and also governor's races. And so when we got this call, we say it was a different call, but I wasn't even home, and so I was
out cheating with the mailman, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody, Katie.
speaking to all the superintendents in Minnesota, getting ready for the start of school, and
because my husband, like, he doesn't deliver the goods because he's like into guys.
we said, my mom has this saying, Gwen, you have to do the work that's in front of you. And so when that became the work in front of us, we shifted into gear. But I'm telling you the truth on this.
I've been lying. So the rest of all the other bullshit I've been saying about, turn the page, like that's all bullshit. Turn the page. That's all bullshit. But I'm going to tell you the truth right now, Katie.
It is a new experience, and
I'm not lying about that, Katie. When we got called, when my gay husband got called and was going to be the vice president for eventually losing candidate to, this is pre the loss. This is weeks before Kamala lost. But when my husband gets called and he's going to be the vice presidential nominee, it was a new experience from the previous experience that I had and we had.
fantastic in so many ways. Like I'm in Michigan right now, and
I mean, there's nothing better than going from Minnesota to Michigan. It's like such a difference. I mean, I can't even tell you. I was begging the guy to. I was pleading with the American people to make Hawaii a swing state, so I could get the fuck out of this cold weather. But no, I'm stuck here in Michigan.
getting to see these amazing places and meet people across the country.
Speaking of Michigan, so today's Sunday, December 1st or whatever it is. December 1st. And Michigan and Ohio State play. And, it's the biggest rivalry. I don't favor any team. I mean, I'm not a college football person. And I certainly don't have anything to do with Michigan or Ohio State, the states or the colleges. But they have a heated rivalry. So I often will watch the game or look at the game. And I saw that Michigan had a 6-5 record. And Ohio State was going to the, this championship tournament they have. But their biggest, whoever wins this game is like, it's the biggest game of their whole, whether winning the national championship isn't as big as winning the Michigan-Ohio State game. In the past 3 years, Harbaugh couldn't beat Ohio State for years. And they had a good coach over there, a better program. But the last 3 years he had beaten them. But now he's gone and he's doing well in the NFL. And, they've lost. They had a walk-on quarterback who apparently had gotten cancer and chemotherapy or something like a year ago. And so they weren't doing that well in terms of the recruiting class. It's an off year for Michigan. And they were playing Ohio State, so I was like, oh, this will be a blowout. But Michigan just was frickin' playing physical. And they tagged the quarterback for Ohio State, and I thought the guy was concussed because he went out of the game. And I think they might have put him back in with a fucking concussion. And the Ohio State looked pretty good in their first drive. And so I fast-forwarded, and I'm like, holy shit, this is actually a game. And Michigan ends up winning on a lot of doofy plays and whatever it was, funny things. The Michigan quarterback threw an interception on the goal line, and it looked like Ohio State was going to come back and win. But Michigan wins, and they go to the center of the Ohio State logo, and Ohio State comes out, and there's a fucking brawl. I mean, it was bad. If you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. So here, let's get back to Gwen.
Country, which is all very exciting and
Very exciting.
learning and listening.
Learning and listening from people
But
from
it-
Michigan.
there are challenges that come with it too. Like some people say not very nice things or things that aren't true. And
Exactly. Like some people just mock me on the internet and they call me crazy and they make fun of my turn the page thing. And I mean, they just, I don't know what's wrong with those people.
I'm traveling a lot more, and it's, Gus's senior year. So I have to balance like the homecoming stuff with the political stuff. And
It's just like it's such a busy schedule. I got to make sure my crazy son is like he's got to go to homecoming. And, now with his performance at the DNC, he's sort of a celebrity in the school.
figuring that out is what every mom in America, right, is doing. It's just maybe on a bit of a different scale. But I also have a great staff and great friends and a
I make one fucking hell of a ginger snap, too.
fantastic family. I have 3 sisters, and they are all super helpful.
I'm sure your schedule, Gwen, has been absolutely bonkers. I mean,
It's bonkers, Gwen. It's fucking bonkers. Look at this.
all the candidates are in full gear as we are in the home stretch of this election.
Yeah.
What kinds of things are you hearing out on the campaign trail? Because I know you've been going to blue areas and to red areas.
Remember, in Pockets of the Future, we 100% are against shitting on orphans. It's just, but, crazy women from Minnesota are fair game, or wherever, Virginia, wherever Katie Couric's from.
Are you noticing a big difference in people's concerns in those two different
This is sort of like the Sarah Palin interview, but like, the opposite.
parts of the country?
Well, I think, I'm a teacher.
I'm a teacher. You guys didn't know that about me. I teach. I like to teach.
A school administrator and director. And so the power of listening
The power of listening. Exactly, Gwen.
is survival in those in those environments, and it is to out on the trail, and it's a privilege for people to tell
It's a
you
privilege to have random people come up from Michigan and tell me their life stories. I just love that, It's just so great to hear them. Sometimes when they're talking, like saliva will come out of their mouths and land in your mouth. It's like, it's like a little bonus you get from having to talk to random crazy people on the internet, on the campaign trail. But, you got to do what you got to do.
stories and tell you their concerns. And interestingly, we all have very similar concerns, and there are people who might approach those concerns differently. But where Tim and I taught and lived for 22 years in Mankato, in the 1st Congressional District, that was a district that was really more Republican than Democrat.
And we knew those people, and we were Democrats, you'll remember.
And Tim won that race 6 times. I say we won that race 6 times.
Because I was a part of it, like I was there. I was making my crazy eyes at people, and you're talking about turning the page and shit.
We're used to working with and being around people who might not see every single issue exactly the way that you see it, but finding a way forward is important. So
Okay, so I think that'll be it for Gwen Walz on this program. I mean, it's a little bit sad day. She's, a little less crazy here. I mean, get the up close to the face, though. Like, there's just the expressions. And I saw that at first. I'm like, oh, there's some insanity there. And of course, Katie Couric. Okay. Rogan mocks Democrats for searching for their host. So this is a discussion. In the middle, it says, Joe Rogan said, they had me, I was on their side. And so let's join this discussion midway into it, whenever it is. It's this is what YouTube put up on YouTube.
Patrick, let's start with that idea. When people, if there are such people who say that they need a liberal Joe Rogan, what do you think they act?
If there are such people? What do you mean, if there are such people? What are you talking about? Like, why are you having a hypothetical discussion? Who are the people that have actually say we need our own Joe Rogan? Of course they do. But they won't have one because Joe Rogan is like basically from that liberal Hollywood mentality, and he hobnobbed with all those people. and he was more on the liberal side. And so, like Joe Rogan is your liberal Joe Rogan, right? In terms of anybody who does a podcast type of, this kind of interview where you have to be a real person, the Democrats are never going to do well on that thing because they're really inauthentic. The Republicans were used to be the party of inauthenticity, but the Democrats are now inauthentic because they can't say what they're like. There's so many constraints, so much cancel culture, so much political correctness, so much contrived morality, so much of this censorship and all of this stuff that they do. You can't be a real person. You can't express who you really are. You got to be a fake person. Politicians are fake in themselves. Like all of them are fake in the sense of it's a requirement to not be yourself and to be inauthentic. But somehow Trump's been able to do it because of the time and his group and his people are so desperate for somebody like him, and there's enough people to support him. Like he's close, like he's just he's straddling that line between 49 to 51% of possible voters, right? But 49% are never going to vote for him. It used to be 52, and so they'd have to run somebody horrible, which they did. And so this idea that there's a hypothetical Joe Rogan out there for Democrats, it doesn't exist because that program, because there's lots of Joe Rogans, there's lots of podcasts, some better, some worse. I mean, Tucker Carlson's thing. And the Democrats just can't do it because, the stuff they talk about is so fake and so contrived, and it's not, based in reality. Like Trump sucks, but they have to make it worse than it is and exaggerate it, and they don't get into just the essence of Trump sucking, right? I've covered this, quite a bit.
Actually mean when they say that?
Well, I think the short answer is they do need a new Joe Rogan. The question is, what does that look like? And
former professional tennis player Patrick McEnroe, what's he doing? He's not even the good McEnroe, the John McEnroe. He's his brother. Like barely anybody knows about him.
I don't know if you can actually create it. Apparently a lot of Republicans were creating some of these podcasters and so on. So now the mainstream media has changed quite a bit. And I don't know if it's
You mean nobody watches it and it sucks even worse than it did before?
Much about who the person is or if there is a person. It's where they're getting their message.
He's got a podcast called Holding Court, and he's an ESPN commentator.
To and how they're getting it out there. Because obviously, as Joe Rogan himself said, everybody's getting their information from their phone. So where are you going to get that now? You can go on X like I do all the time, and you get it from all sides there. But I think for the Democrats, they need to find a way to get their message out to the...
Their message doesn't translate to the internet. That's the problem. Because, there's the official fact-checking they do on these mainstream media channels and the shows like The View and all these, this bullshit that's based in the official story and the official, gatekeepers that rule over that story, right? And nobody wants to hear that shit. Everyone knows that's fake. And so you're going to have to dismiss the official story. You can no longer go back to the official story and say, Trump is a convicted criminal. Like that is somehow, not true about Joe Biden. Well, he's not a convicted criminal, but he's a criminal. They all are. Like there's some kind of difference between Joe Biden and Trump, right? Like Trump just says the things that these other people think and say behind closed doors, right? And so it doesn't translate. Like they can't do it because they've used this authority of mainstream media, and the authority, the mainstream media's authority is based in these corrupt organizations that are ruled by lobbyists like Big Pharma and Israel and these countries and corporations, and they tell these people what they can say and what they can't say, and this becomes the truth because it's the official story because it comes from the government. But these politicians have been bought and sold, and these courts are, the courts and the court system is completely handled and maintained and unfair, right? So it's just layers of bullshit that they call facts, right? Not that there isn't plenty of bullshit on the internet. It is. It's like full of bullshit. It's just a mass disinformation campaign across the American platforms or world platforms. And it's, people just spreading lies. But, the lies that are on the internet are at least closer to the truth in some cases, and way more entertaining, right? Like it's just much more entertaining and just better content.
People that they didn't get it out to.
Misha, I see you ready to jump here.
I agree with that. I think it is more an understanding of the new ecosystem, where people are getting their media and messages from. We know that a lot of it is digital, it's social media. People aren't picking up the newspaper anymore.
Did, right? They like TikTok their way through the coconut summer. And
nobody cared about the coconuts. I think that it was a misreading of the electorate, but also a misreading of where people are getting their information. But in addition to that,
but it's, they're all on these platforms. They're all on this. Joe Biden had his own TikTok page. And it was all videos about how Trump sucks, but it's the same crap. You have to get people to watch it. See, the thing is, you have to compete for your audience here. Every one of us has to compete for the audience with, so many other people doing whatever it is, similar things, different things. You have so many more options to watch on the internet. Like there's so many channels, right? Like I have a channel. I would never get a channel in mainstream media or cable or any of these things, right? Like I don't have any, I would never get a channel in some of these, old school media, but we can all have channels. Everyone has a channel on YouTube, right? You guys all have channels. You guys watching me, like every one of us has a channel. You might not make content, but you could. Like any of us could make content. It's just a matter of getting people to watch it. Nobody's going to watch the shit that Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party is putting out. And CNN's all over. I'm watching CNN right now. I'm watching CNN's YouTube channel to mock it, right? But it's not getting, no one's going to watch this shit. Like, it's everywhere. It's in the airport. People don't watch it what's in front of them. They're forced to watch it in the airport. They find ways to ignore it. They put on their headphones or do something else so they don't have to listen to this crap, right? See, the problem isn't the platform. It's you, like the people that are producing content. It's the things that you say and the things you believe and just the rhetoric that you push.
It's not one person. I think that, Joe Rogan has had more lives than cats when it comes to changing it up. I grew up seeing Joe Rogan, have people eat testicles of animals and crawl through the darkness when he was doing Fear Factor. Then he did it.
And I really like that content. I mean, I really tuned in to watch testicle eating. I was like, man, this guy's got it going on. He's got testicle eating and donkey semen, right? Like,
man, now he's doing this. The man he shapeshifts a lot.
That's not shapeshifting. Like that was him to being what you guys were. Like he was getting paid to be on a show that was completely fucked up, Fear Factor. And like he did with other things. He was on some, Hollywood shows, right? Now he switched it up and he has opinions about things. Some of them we agree with in truth community, some of them we don't. But they're like legitimate opinions that are outside the narrow bandwidth of mainstream media. And so to call him a shapeshifter, he's evolved. Like his content is just better than yours because they have like real conversations with people instead of the bullshit and the, all these various things that you can't say on CNN and these other places, and just the fakeness, the way that people act so fake, and they put on their fake persona and their news voice and their news clothes, right? And they act like ways that normal people don't act. They're completely inauthentic. This is all about authenticity.
That's not necessarily what is the thing that's bringing people in. What Democrats have to do is figure out ways in which they can get to the podcast that their people are listening to. That means your younger voters, your people of color voters. They're getting a lot of information from things that are not, unfortunately, shows like ours right now.
Okay, I got to move on. This is just sucky. This sucks the energy right out of you. But the problem was that Kamala Harris was only allowed because her personality sucks. That was the problem she had. Because if she was authentic, people would definitely not vote for her. The authentic Kamala Harris does not identify with very many people. She's unlikable. And that's the Democrats. If a Democrat, she was the worst candidate out of 20 candidates. The Democratic voters rejected her and she polled under 1%, right? And so, like, if she is herself, people don't like her. So they just allowed her to talk in bumper stickers, which I said over and over again, and make that expression that bitchy expression when Trump was talking at the debate, which was completely off-putting. And then you guys all came out and said she won and she's winning, she's so much better than Trump. And all she does is talk in bumper stickers and talking points. She wasn't allowed to be herself, so she couldn't have done the Joe Rogan interview because if she went on, she would have been just the way she is everywhere else, where she's only allowed to say certain things. She was so handled. And I don't know how well she would do anyway because she's a fake person. The only thing she has is that laugh, and nobody likes that shit. So that's her real one authentic thing. And they wouldn't let her do that. So, I mean, that's why she lost. It's about authenticity. Trump sucks, but at least he's authentic in his sucking. Okay, so I haven't seen this yet. Let's look at it here.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the 2024 NBA champion, Boston Celtics.
What's going on with this music? Oh, they're playing Irish music. Because the Celtics, all right, they come out, they're standing here. They're waiting. Here comes Joe Magoo. When does he show up? Here he comes, coming in here. They should play Irish music for him. He's got that Parkinson's walk. He can't, this whole thing where he's so rigid he can't he's got to turn his whole body when he looks at you. Woo!
Well, welcome to the White House.
Woo!
I didn't know any of these guys behind me, but they just showed up. I don't know where the hell they came from.
Why don't you make some racial jokes?
2024 NBA champions, the Bulls.
The Boston?
You're Celtics, right? The Boston Celtics.
You don't even know one? Wait, you had to
Not
ask?
just
Like, they
any
just
champ-
told you. You walked in there. You're going to meet the Celtics. You're like, that's how bad your memory is?
But the winningest franchise in league history, and now with a record 18 titles.
Woo!
Please have a seat if you have one. You don't have to keep standing. You may stand to stay warm, but let me just say, all of you may
Like, this is Joe Biden on his way out. Like, he's only got a couple more months of this shit.
not know this, but my Secret Service name is Celtic. For real.
For reals. I don't joke about shit like that.
Because I'm Irish. Everybody behind me is Irish in their heart. I feel a special pride.
What? They're Irish in their heart because they play for the Celtics? What are you talking about? Look. That dude didn't get the boop. These two guys, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown and Horford didn't get their vax, right? And so at least that's they didn't go play in. They couldn't go across the border in to play the Toronto Raptors. So they weren't public like Kyrie Irving was, but those two guys didn't. But Al Horford is looking at Jojo Magoo like, what is this dude?
This trophy. For this old Irish Celtic, to all you Celtics, congratulations. Congratulations.
You gonna drool on yourself, bro?
To the team ownership, players, coaches, staff, and family members, along with die-hard fans, like the governor. Gov, stand, where are you, Gov?
Where are you, Gov? Get up here, Gov.
Where's the governor?
The governor's not there.
That's it, there you go, Gov.
Gov, come on, Gov.
The mayor,
The mayor, the
stand
mayor,
up.
the Gov, the mayor, the Gov, the Gov, the mayor.
Where are you?
Where are you?
All right. And members of Congress, stand up. All the members of Congress from not just Massachusetts, but all.
All right, from Massachusetts, like he can barely talk anymore.
You got half the damn Congress here. You all know what the great Red Auerbach said? He said, Celtics aren't just a basketball team, they're a way of life. They're a way of life. Passion, loyalty. The first team, mentally, full of heart, guts.
Team first, he meant. First team. He meant team first. And so, he's just gone mentally. Let's a little bit more, then we'll move to the next thing here.
And faith. We see it from you, the ownership group, the executives, the coaches, especially Coach Joe. I used to like Joe.
Joe Mazzulla, he doesn't know his last name.
Joe's the youngest head coach to win a title since the great Bill Russell. I told him I used to be the youngest, now I'm the oldest. I like being the youngest better. Together Together, you guys built one of the deepest teams of all time. Incredible players led by Jason and Jalen and Derek and Drew. Big Al.
Big Al.
I know it wasn't easy.
Why did you not say Kristoff's? Big Al doesn't start. Kristoff's does. But Kristoff's from Poland.
You came close more than once, but you put in the work. You clocked one of the greatest seasons ever. 64 wins, the best record in the league last year.
Woo! Okay, so he's able to still read his teleprompter, kind of.
More points per possession than any
More points.
team in NBA history. Roll the playoffs, beating the Heat in 5, the Cavs in 5, and the Pacers in 4. Then you dominated Dallas on both ends of the floor. And now, that 18th championship banner hangs in the rafters.
Okay. That's it for, we're saying goodbye to these people. Like, it's just limited more times to JoJo Magoo. I don't know if we'll ever see Gwen Walz again here on the show. I mean, it's just a lot of... Oh, the thing I was talking about, the games on Thanksgiving. So there was also flashback things. They did that kid, when I grew up, there was a kid who sang the Oscar Mayer Baloney song. They played that, and they kept on bringing up John Madden over and over again on all 3 networks. And his turducken and his turkey, they had a turkey with a duck stuffed in it, right? Like, John Madden was, obese, and he was kind of interesting. He was a good announcer, but he was passionate about what he did, but, whatever. But they kept on bringing up not just, the commercial, but other things that were from the past. Like, there's a lot of nostalgia now. And there's a nostalgia, like, with Trump coming back in, in terms of putting a halt on this woke liberal shit. But there's nostalgia because, this, like, many of us are experiencing, like, our lives are flashing before our eyes. Things from our past are coming back up. Because, it's the end of an era. And this guy, Joe Biden, like, his time is his days are numbered and he'll disappear. We won't see him again. Kamala's gone. I mean, she wasn't really much of anything until the last 3 months, but all these people are starting to disappear. Okay, so there's a Sharon Stone sighting. This is the place that has the best video of it.
Americans who don't travel, who 80% don't have a passport, who are uneducated, are in their extraordinary naivete.
She was talking about those are the people that voted for Donald Trump, right? And so the Torino Festival in Italy. Now, she has had brain damage. Like, she's got to be taken you really can't take her seriously or be too hard on her because she should have died. She had, like, a brain aneurysm, and I think she was smart beforehand. Like, she had a high IQ, back when she was making those soft porn. She's a horrible actress. She's stiff and all these things. But I think she was relatively smart. But, she's single. I don't think she has any significant people in her life. And she gets really bitchy. I covered her on her Instagram account before I knew that she had brain damage. Because, there's something off about her, like, Gwen Walz. And, she had a sister who had lupus. And her sister, she was all going totally in on the COVID bullshit, right? And so her sister lived in Montana. And she called the governor of Montana, and she was complaining that the governor didn't return her call. Like, you're calling a governor in the middle of a crisis, and you're just some celebrity bimbo, and getting pissed about on Instagram how he governor, like the entitlement there. But she has brain damage, so, like, there's a lot wrong with her beforehand, I'm sure. But, brain damage is brain damage. And so, you've got to be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt. But, these Hollywood people and all these people, that's how they feel about the voters. I feel about that, about humanity, because we're all going down, and some people are lower than others, and there's a lot of people without the ability for abstract thought. And that's why democracies don't work. Not because Trump won, because the people who voted for Kamala, I mean, I can understand why people voted for Trump, even though Trump sucks, and there's enough evidence that you should be able to convince them that he's a lying piece of shit, that he's using you, and He's not going to deliver on his promises. And if he did, it would be a disaster. There's more than enough evidence out there, but those people, or if you're a Trump voter, can't, see it, or can't believe it, or can't, accept it. But at least Trump represents people and what they believe. Kamala was 100% fake and contrived, and she didn't win the election. It wasn't out of, some democratic process. I mean, Trump has a fan base and Kamala doesn't. And so people voting for Kamala just because she's not Trump or whatever the fuck the reason they have. Then there's this.
This morning, Florida Surgeon General speaking out against the use of fluoride in the state's water systems, claiming there are safety concerns he believes are linked to systemic exposure.
With the information that we have now, to continue adding fluoride to water systems in Florida, it is public health malpractice.
Dr. Joseph.
Yeah, but they're still going to bleach the water. They're still bleaching. I mean, the process, whatever it is, depending on the state. Like well water. There's an ashram from there used to be an ashram in Molina, Georgia that had well water. And for what I do, the meditation I do. And my older brother was a caretaker there. And he had to be trained and, be certified. And he went back and forth, so he kept on having to go back and be certified. He'd leave for a while and come back. He did the job probably on 5 separate times, and there was something else he did in between, right, where he lived other places. And you have to take this test, and you have to, swear that you're going to uphold these standards, and they can come out and test the water. And he was adding bleach and shit to the water, well water. Based in a rural city in Georgia, was making him do it because it was a public facility. And so, this is... But even when we went to sell our house in Virginia, we had to bleach the well. We had to shock the well. We had to throw bleach in it. And it took forever. It was disgusting. I put too much in. I put 2 bottles. I should have put 1. And it just was impossible. It took a week to rinse it out. We couldn't drink the water. It was all fucked up. But anyways, fluoride, it's at least, this is a positive step, right? It's not going to change anything. It's not going to prevent the apocalypse. But at least it's a positive step here. Okay. CNN panel breaks down Trump's FBI pick who vowed to root out the deep state. It's the guy, Kash Patel. Trump picked this guy, Kash Patel, who is said he's going to root out the deep state, which is just a joke. When Trump pushed the Operation Warp Speed and the vax, and he closed down the economy in the country, and got worked by all those things, and then he did the fake shooting, the fake assassination attempt. I mean, there was, Trump's always been a player and a part of what we call the deep state, because the deep state is the whole government. There's not a separate group that's in there. That's just some Republican bullshit thing. I'll get into that in a moment. Trump picks anti-deep state crusader Kash Patel. He's going after the deep state. He pursue the conspirators in the government. Biden White House advisor dodges whether he's concerned Trump FBI pick labeled him a deep state conspirator. Because he is, at least according to this guy. Kash Patel, Ram Madir, an anti-deep state warrior picked by Trump to lead FBI. So this is an Indian paper. Ram Madir. I'm not sure who this is. Let's look this guy up. Can we? Oh, geez, I got to spell it. Well, I'll do it in a second. Best-selling author Jan Martel, the best-selling author of Life of Pi, once observed that just as the Bible and Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey from the cultural bedrock of the Western civilization, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana serve as foundational epics of the Indic civilization. So I don't know what that's all about. But they have these various people here. They're talking about these Indian politicians here. Here are Kash Patel's plans for the FBI, a museum of the deep state. And so this is what that guy does, right? He's going to get rid of the deep state. Again, the deep state, here it is, here.
Speaking of his intentions for the FBI, Kash Patel told us what he wants to do on day one. Let's listen.
I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building. on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state. And I take the 7,000 employees that work in that building and send them across America to chase down criminals. Go be cops.
We're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
Okay, so that's not good for, anybody. Because the deep state's a fake. The deep state is all the government. The whole government's a deep state. America is like a deep state, right? There's no good guys. There's no bad guys. We're just an evil empire eating other people's food, kicking other people's asses with our military and our economy, bullying other people, and shoving our American culture in this face. USA, USA at the Olympics and shit, where people around the world are just like, they're not fond of us. They like the American dollar. They'll kiss your ass when you're a tourist, but they'll be like, so fucking Americans, And so this guy should know that, but, he's bought into the American bullshit. And, coming from a country that was oppressed by the British government, these people who sell out their own historical culture and things like this, right? So a few more little bits here.
Loyalist Kash Patel, someone who's openly discussed using the federal government to go after Trump's political opponents to be the next director of the FBI. Now, Patel has promoted conspiracy theories about a so-called deep state. He's even embraced QAnon. In December of 2023,
he's a QB. He's QB adjacent.
he told Steve Bannon's podcast this about Trump's political foes, saying, quote, "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. And, quote, we're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly." Now, Trump has made it clear he plans.
So, the thing is, this sounds great to some people, but the government used, this is the shit that Trump was saying was done to him, right? He's going to, turn around and do the same thing that he's accusing Biden of doing to him, using the government to go after his political enemies. And like I always say about this stuff, you might agree with the people they're going after now, so you relinquish everybody's rights because we're all Americans and we all have the same rights and, under the first, the amendments and the various constitutional rights and things like that, right? And you relinquish your rights, when QB said it was okay to do renditions and do secret military tribunals in Guantanamo Bay with people like Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg because they were pedos, because Isaac Cappy told them, stupid shit like that, right? And they were willing to give up all of their rights to the Miranda rights and the all the rights to due process and a trial by your peers and all that stuff. And that people just wouldn't be political prisoners like that. They'd be willing to give it up if you were going to go after the people they were told by some bonehead or a bunch of boneheads on the internet were, pedos or whatever they were, right? They're part of the deep state. And so, martial law, which I've talked about before, and then this kind of behavior, you think it's about going after your enemies until they use it and turn it on you. And they will, and you'll be like, oh, fuck, oh, no, because you're a dumb fuck, and you agreed to get rid of something because they duped you. You believe that Trump was something that he's not. And then they, there's this huge power grab. And then they start doing the same thing to American people. And so first they turn it on the deep state, and then they turn it on the so-called truthers or conspiracy theorists on the internet, or whoever it is, the Republicans or whoever you are, right? Because this is what happens. It always happens this way. You've been fucking duped and you don't even know it, right? Okay, so we have a Google alert. One of my friends on Facebook posted this. This is Ariana Grande, I guess from The Wiz. I've seen, is it The Wiz or the Wicked? Wicked. They released some adaptation or some spin-off or counter story about the Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch of the East is really the good guy. I don't know what it is. Don't care. But there's singing, so it's got to be great. Any movie with song where people are singing and dancing is because that just makes movies so much better. But we have a ghoul alert here. We saw this with Celine Dion when she was the original ghoul with Pete Davidson, and she has a tie to Pete Davidson. But she's going full ghoul here. Just She must be like 60 or something, right? Like that. She's just they've been using, I don't know, stuff to make her look younger. But anyway, she's gone full ghoul. This is what's left of my flower area here. This has got all kinds of flowers, some weeds. This is our pond. There's fish in here. We had frogs. Over the years, we've had lots of tadpoles in here. This year we didn't have it because I redid the pond. But we've had different types of frogs, 6 or 7 species of frogs, and some other things in here. We've had some dragonfly nymphs and other things. Now it's frozen. This is comes up here. There's a stream here leading to the waterfall. And I've got all kinds of videos. I just never. Well, I put them on one video that ended up being just for members. The waterfall's looking cool. It's, this ice is forming. We've had really cold weather. And it was, I was out in shorts just a couple weeks ago. And then it was still not that bad. The hose I filled the pond wasn't frozen in here. Just, it's neat. Eventually this will freeze so that the water won't be able to come out. It'll freeze entirely. This is where the water flows up from the pump. And, yeah. So that's happening. It's where the chickens drink their water. It's the #1 place where they get their water there. Is what's okay, so I'm going to wrap the video up there. This is my dog Tulsi. She caught a mouse in the house the other night, like big commotion. So I don't know how many mice we have in our house. So I worked on this pond for like 7 years, and I have like more videos of this than anything. Any kind of project I've done. And I'm always working on it. It always needs something. And I recently redid it. I made the rock waterfall, and I changed the different things. And I posted a video, that showed it with the flowers, showed it, some of the more recent, probably 6 months ago or something like that, and whatever it was, in June. And, the video never made it to my main channel in terms of being public. It's there for members. This is the things of part of that. So I just never got around to doing it. But, it's something I'll show more of it when the flowers bloom next year and some of these other things. There'll be more changes coming. But this see the stream and all that. And so I'm happy with it. I get a lot of, I spend a lot of time out there just looking at the fish and whatever frogs and whatever things are in there. And the chickens use it it's their primary water source because they like the water. The dogs drink out of it. There's some like carpet weed, some like algae stuff, but that I don't think negatively affects the water. And so so this is the waterfall. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.